Welcome back to the Survivor edition of Why Blank Lost. I'm David Bloomberg, and I'm 45 years old, just like Sue. Yeah, that's the
Listen,
ticket. And
I am
joining
45
me,
years old, and there's nothing wrong with being
well,
45 years old.
you just blew it because I was going to introduce you as my 35-year-old co-host, Jessica Lewis.
I'll take it. Thank you. I am
Yes.
35. Listen,
Yes.
considering I still get
Well, we'll just edit out
ID'd
that part where you
sometimes.
said your actual age.
I know, but I do still get ID'd when I go and buy some certain type of beverages at times, which is quite fun.
Yeah,
So
I don't.
I do. And my family thinks it's great. So anyway, but I'm not the only one who's here, David.
You are not. As our video viewers can see, we are extremely thrilled to welcome our special guest, Liz Wilcox.
Yay!
What's up, friends?
I was going to
if
subtract
Sue
10 years, or more from your age, but that would make you like a child. So
yeah, well, I was gonna say if Sue is 45, I am a rumored billionaire.
yeah, I mean, Sue,
There's something to those rumors.
yeah. Sue is older than I am. One of the rare cast members who's older than I am.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And Sue, you look like you're in great shape. You look good. I'm sorry, you don't look 45. Now, maybe to the 20-year-olds who she's playing with, what do they know the difference?
Right.
I don't know. Like mom's age, that's what they think of. But
I just thought it was fascinating that Kyle was so like, that's so great. Since she was 45, and I'm like, when did that become like a special thing? Like, oh, look at her. Oh, she's 45. That's so great. Like, come on, 45. 45 is young. So Kyle, don't be
yes,
impressed.
it is.
Yeah, I mean, it was like, oh, look at you. Like, you don't have a wheelchair pushing you around. Like, come on, she said she was 45, and look at the woman. I mean, I thought that was quite strange. Quite strange. And Sue, you look great. You look fantastic. But I do think that was a strange kind of choice to make, but regardless, I get it. I understand.
Well, she wanted to lie to make herself look like more of a threat. Right, Liz?
I don't know, and I feel like I have no comment because I also was telling all sorts of lies out there to throw people off. But I feel like the thing about Kyle is he was already like in the tone. Like I'm pretty sure he said something about grandkids, and then she said she was 45, and I'm like, oh, sis.
I think it was reversed. I think he said something about grandkids afterwards, which implies to me that she has talked about her grandkids, which, yes, you can have grandkids at 45.
You certainly can. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, she did. You're right. And I will say my mother became a grandmother at age 36. So when she was 45, she had a 9-year-old grandson.
Wow. So it's certainly possible. But I just feel like the shock and awe of someone being 45 and just kind of impressing Kyle so much that they were not in a wheelchair or needing to be like taken care of. Okay, Kyle. 45 is not that bad, all right?
Yeah.
It's not that bad.
Yeah.
Sweet baby K.
So besides that, even this was one heck of an episode for us to discuss. Even now, 2 days later, still an amazing episode.
Mm-hmm. This was probably one of the first episodes, I think, in a very long time where I was giddy watching it. I was like, I finally felt like we're getting back to the Survivor that I used to really love, where it really is the underhanded and like people are playing the game. And I'm gonna drop a name. I'm just gonna say it. Russell Hantz is kind of like, that kind of, play that we all like. Yes, where we all kind of cringe, but at the same time, we're like, oh, that's so good, So it's like I loved it so much. I enjoyed it. It was fantastic. I can't wait to talk about it. So anyway, I'm just very excited about this particular episode and my boy Rome.
Yes.
Yeah. My boy Rome.
Holler at Rome. I also am excited about this episode. I was on the edge of my seat. I was like, oh my gosh, I really have no idea what is about to happen. This is, it was very like giving of old school. People came to play. I think it honestly was the best episode of the new era. Like 46 could never. Like this was so good.
Yeah, sorry, Liz. We're just this is on a different level for sure.
It really was. It really was. I was thinking about it, and our episode 4 was Banu. It was like basically we could have just skipped that episode.
Well, we would have preferred if we had skipped the previous 2 episodes, which were a
goodness
bit overloaded.
yes,
as I
very
recall.
overloaded.
But yeah, it was interesting reading and watching Kishan's interviews afterwards, because he provided some good additional information, but he also added insight that I'm sorry to say made me think about his game less positively.
I do think that this particular episode really highlights why this podcast is so significant, because unless you read all of the, and I'm not just saying this because I'm selling Why Blank Lost, but unless you read all of the exit press, you are going to be left wanting and a little bit like confused and not truly understanding how we find ourselves with the Kishan vote out. But so this is like the power of editing, right? We've talked about this a lot on this particular podcast, where they don't always show you everything because they want to keep it interesting and keep people guessing and not necessarily know what's going on.
Keep it simple.
Right. And so I do feel like this is why you need this type of podcast, because it does rely upon the representations that are provided by the players and then all of the additional information that we're able to put together. So I think that as I was reading the exit interviews, I was thinking, well, they left that out, didn't they? Now this makes a little more sense. So, I do think that there's going to be a lot of things that we can clarify.
Yeah, and we will do that by following the same path we always do, comparing Kishan's game to my rules for winning that I originally wrote way back after season 1, and have been updating ever since, using all the non-spoiler information available to us from what we saw on TV, interviews, social media, and secret scenes. The newest version of the rules can be found on the website by going to our dedicated page at robhaswebsite.com/yxlostfeed and clicking on the link bubble for the Survivor rules. Now, before we go any further, I do want to mention a programming note. Normally, I would mention this at the end, but I know it's hard to believe some people don't stay all the way till the very end. Yes.
I'm pissed.
Yeah. The next episode will be delayed. Probably won't be posted until, I'm hoping, Monday morning. My younger son is getting married on Saturday, so I'll be a little busy this coming week.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Yeah.
I hope everyone's ready for the big day.
I don't know that you're ever ready till it happens, because
well, that's true.
Who knows what could happen. At my wedding, like, my mom forgot her shoes and someone had to run back and get her shoes,
Oh my.
So it just, you never know.
Yeah, that's fair.
We'll find out. We believe we're as ready as we can be.
All right. Well, good luck. I hope it all goes well.
Thank you. Now, before we address how Kishan did in terms of the rules, we always have some other things to discuss from the episode. But before we get to those, I wanted to check in with you, Liz. Now, I, of course, met you and we got to hang out in Chicago at the RHAP event, but that was a few months ago. And, not many people on RHAP might know what you've been up to. So what's new?
Just been making money, basically. You know me. So what's new with me is after Survivor ended, I actually bought a house. This is like I don't know, it's turning into my office, but it came with like some boyish wallpaper. But anyway, I'm very excited to buy the house. But I have to tell you, the timing was a little weird because I promised my daughter if I win Survivor, we'll buy a house because I lived very nomadically the first like 5, 6, 7 years of her life. We traveled in an RV. We always rented fully furnished homes. And so I started searching for this house. We started the paperwork for it. And she was so convinced that I had won. She was like, oh my gosh. Because I hadn't told her because she's little and she's a big mouth, right? She would have told everyone, like no matter what position I got, right? So I didn't tell her. I mean, she knew I was skinny and haggard and unwell when I came home. So she just figured I won. She was like, wow, look at mom. She's a skeleton, but she got that bag. This is great, But anyway, bought the house and that feels really, really good. And I use my Survivor money to furnish it.
Mm-hmm.
And other than that, I've just
great.
been, yeah, thank you. I've just been, honestly, I rested. I was offline for about 3 months after the finale because I guess, like me and not getting Applebee's, a lot of fans were pissed about me. I don't know. So I just got off the
You
internet
did
for a
send
while.
a bit of a shockwave through the internet for a bit.
We left the island knowing like, okay, people will either love Liz or hate her. Like we would say that even on the island, they'd be like, oh, Liz, there will be no one who doesn't have an opinion about you. So that, I mean, I guess that's how my tribe mates were too. They had very strong opinions about me. But anyway, I've just been resting. I'm finally getting back into work and update on my allergies. I'm really trying to get to the bottom of them. And they do seem to be actually like alleviating and not as many like wild reactions. So I
Good.
feel
That's
really good.
great.
I'm feeling really good. Yeah.
Fantastic.
So
Wow.
hopefully they'll be gone by the time 50 rolls around, so you can go out there and eat coconut and all these other things.
That's so interesting. People always ask me like, "Oh, would you play again?" And I said, "Yeah, of course. I have a giant ego." I'm pretty sure I said that in like episode 3, but I don't know if they would ever invite me back simply because of the allergies. I do remember the last conversation I had with Dr. Will, the doctor on site for our season. He said, I'm not going to fake an accent, but he was like, Liz, we didn't think you'd last very long. And I took such offense. I was like, what do you mean? Why would you even have me on the show then? Like,
That's
what?
crazy.
And he was like, no, I mean, because of your allergies, we were really thinking you would drop out any second. And I'm like, well, you clearly don't know me. Like I will that never came across my mind. Never would I have ever quit over food. It's $1 million. I think I've made it clear. I love money. Like I
You
would
do love money.
never. Would never
Well, and I did
quit
find it
over a coconut.
fascinating. Yeah, when I heard about all of your allergies, I'm like, what is this poor girl going to eat when she gets out there? So impressive, truly impressive that you were able to just fight through and say, you know what, it's about the money. I love that. I love that angle.
Thank you so much. So what they didn't show on the show, of course, like I support 3 households. I really have come from nothing. I just told people I was a millionaire. I'm actually a single mom. I support 3 households. Like I could have used the cash flow, but what are you going to do? Instead they turned me into an icon, honestly. So I can't even be mad about it.
I love that. I love it. And you appear to be an Applebee's mascot. So this is fantastic.
Shout out Applebee's. Shout out Bourbon Burger.
I hope you went to Applebee's a lot. I hope you went there a lot.
I went there. Well, when I got home, I actually was really sick and I couldn't really eat for almost a month. And then my appetite came back and I was ravenous and I ate Applebee's. I went on a road trip with my daughter and we ate Applebee's probably at 20 different locations across the country because I was like Applebee's crazy when I came home. It was just like, for spite, I'm going to go to Applebee's tonight.
Did anyone recognize you from any Applebee's?
Actually, one time, Ben from my season and I went to Applebee's together, and there were these people that walked in and they were like, "No way. Oh my gosh, Liz, is that really you? You're at Applebee's." Like, it was like, I mean,
That's
can you
incredible.
imagine, a few weeks
Yeah.
after seeing that on TV, you literally see the person eating the
I would have
burger.
totally
Like,
sent you a bourbon burger too. I would have been like right over there at that table. Yeah.
right. Get that lady some beef.
Have you seen her when she doesn't get her Applebee's? Get her some food.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, the Applebee's thing, it's been really fun. Speaking to David's question of like what I've been up to, like the Applebee's thing really has been this moment, and it's been fun, to be a part of it. I've been at Disney and people getting on a ride and somebody screams Applebee's. And I've been at restaurants and gas stations and people just hollering out their windows, Applebee's, Liz, you rock. Things like that.
That's so
So
awesome.
that's been so cool. And it feels even a little like reminiscent of those old school days where they had like those moments that just stuck in people's minds. And that feels amazing to be a part of.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
That's great. Shout out to Applebee's.
Shout out Bourbon Burger. And shout out Jeff for making it all happen.
All right. Well, now let's discuss some things that happened this week. But I want to focus on particularly things that came up on last week's podcast. So first, I want to point out that Jessica, you and Heidi were probably right about the choice on the journey last week. I and many others had presumed that if Kyle or Annika tried their luck again after losing their vote, they would regain their vote if they got an advantage. But upon our discussion where you and Heidi were like, what? No. I rewatched it. I discussed it further with Jeff Pittman of True Dork Times. He was the person whose name I was trying to pull out of my brain during the podcast, but I just couldn't get it because, 45-year-old brain.
Of course.
But there is nothing in the instructions that said, if you get an advantage, you get your vote back. It just says you can try your luck again.
Yeah.
And so
I don't like it.
Now we know historically they're really bad at writing rules. So it might have meant that.
It might have. I will say this episode with the journey, they didn't leave anything to question. It was so explicit with like what everything meant with those 3 amulets. I think that's what they were calling them. So I can appreciate there being a little more thorough explanation in regards to that, even though I still didn't like what they did.
No.
No comment.
Now, another thing Heidi was right about was that Genevieve would suddenly rise from nowhere and take control. I mean, she said it a couple times during the podcast, and I had clipped them, and I was getting ready to make a video, and I'm like, I never got around to it. But then this episode happened. I was like, okay, now I got to make it into a video.
She was so right.
Yeah, it was a great prediction by Heidi. And we even got to look into Genevieve's brain as she thought about Kishan, and strangely, all the things he said when she wasn't around, as those
it's amazing how
she
just happened to know all of those things. Yes. Oh, it was an absolutely fascinating culmination of events. And I must say that my Genevieve was something I was thinking about a lot during that moment as well. But yes, really quite incredible to have that moment where you truly see a player processing bits and pieces, and the show is putting it together for you, but that's what she's also formulating in her mind at the same time. So it's just really incredible editing. I love that scene.
Yeah.
That scene was hysterical.
Yes.
And it also, like, for me, it was like, she knows that stuff because she's the only one taking Rome seriously. And Rome is the kind of guy that thinks he's a leader. So he's going to be extra generous to his follower, Genevieve, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, she was able to decipher all that and they were able to, pull it off in the end. But it honestly was hysterical editing.
Yes.
This episode was so great. I'm so
Yeah.
excited, honestly, for the rest of the season. If this is
I am
only
too.
pre-merge.
It's
Yeah.
so good. Yeah, and I
Yeah.
will say that I do really appreciate that Rome really was actually like looking out for Kishan when he was talking to Genevieve about the whole situation. When he was telling her about it, he's like, "Oh, but there was no malice. Like it wasn't like that at all," which I thought was really quite interesting because I feel like it showed a softer side of Rome, that like Rome really isn't all like mean and hardcore. Like I really do think that he is being genuine when those opportunities present themselves. And I think we saw that a couple of times throughout this episode where there were those genuine moments with Rome. So he wasn't trying to throw Kishan under the bus, but he was causing her wheels to spin in a particular way without like doing it in a way where he was trying to goad her to do that. So it was really fascinating to see her putting it together.
Well, I mean, I think, and we'll talk about this plenty in a few minutes, but I think her wheels were already spinning in that way, and he just provided additional information. But
Yes.
you're right about Rome. I think that the people he is loyal to, he is loyal to. And we talked about this a little bit last week, where it was the chicken and egg. Was he treating Asia and Saul the way he was because they were outside of his alliance, or were they outside of his alliance because he didn't get along with them? I think now what we're seeing is it's because once he has an alliance, once he has a group, you're either in with him and he treats you well, or you're on the outs and he treats you like he treated Saul.
But he apologized to Saul.
Yeah, for a reason.
Ish.
And ish, yeah. I'm sorry if I came across in a certain way. Anytime you have an apology with an if in it, it's not a real apology. But hey, but again, we'll have plenty more to say about certain aspects of that later. Now, another thing that I got right last week was that the preview showed supposedly blood all over the place in the Tuku tribe. And I said, oh, that could be red paint for an idol. And it was. Look at that.
Shocking. That would have been way too much blood.
Wow.
And if someone is bleeding that much, they're being medevaced in a second.
Well,
I'm sorry.
Right.
Like,
They're
come
off
on.
the show.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was something I talked with Chelsea, my daughter. I was like, oh, remember in season 42 when they had them cover themselves in that red blood paint or whatever? But I actually loved that this episode, like I felt like in season 42 in that opener, it actually like kind of looked like blood. This looked like paint, right? It was very obvious that, hey, you're doing something game, like with production, so to speak. Like, who are you fooling? Oh, I was playing with the machete.
I mean, but neither of the other two said anything about paint. They kept saying there's blood in your hair, there's blood on your hand, there's, I don't know. My mind went right to red paint because of, I don't remember who had it in, oh gosh, where they had to like stick their hand into red paint to get the idol. I don't remember. It was,
I don't remember that either.
41, 42, 43-ish, I think.
Somewhere in there.
Yeah, I don't know. Early new era. I'm sure we'll get a comment of someone telling me because I can't pull it on my brain right now. 45-year-old brain. But yeah, I did at least, Sue's excuse of having bitten her tongue was smart because they can't see a cut on your tongue. Whereas if she had said, oh, because at first she said she was playing with the machete, and I'm thinking, well, they're going to want to see the cut then.
Right.
Then she said she bit her tongue, and it's like, did you bite your tongue by chewing on the machete? I don't quite know, but we'll,
It
we'll see where this
it was all a little
goes.
strange. It was definitely not, but I will say, how on earth did nobody happen by the red paint area when she was trying to clean it up? Like, I don't understand that at all. That was an insane amount of red paint. She had to do so much to try to cover it, to hide it, to sweep it away, to pick up more leaves. And I am fascinated that nobody came by throughout that entire time.
That is interesting because honestly, the camps aren't gigantic. I mean, they're
Right.
big, but they're not gigantic. But sometimes when I rewatched my season, I was like, "Wow, how did I not walk past that? What was I doing?"
You were resting, you
Right.
didn't
I'm
want
like,
to go out looking. So
I mean, true, but like I ain't stumble upon nobody. I mean, I gotta go to the bathroom. I'm drinking a lot of water.
It's fascinating. The
yeah,
things that you go back and you're like, wow, I really did miss that. So I guess that's one of those moments. But I feel like it was on the path. So it's somewhere that you would think that there would be quite a few people like potentially coming by. But yes,
guess not. Yeah.
craziness.
Mm.
Now, getting into the episode, we basically began with Teeny talking to all of us who analyzed the show strategically. As they said, I'd love to claim the vote for Saul was purely this mastermind strategic plan, but that's not entirely true. I could not fathom writing Asia's name down because of my emotional bond with her. Now, I like how that scene worked both to show players are human and also that they think about strategy at the same time. We know that Teeny listens to RHAP. So, what was going through Teeny's mind, it would have been funny if later in interviews, Teeny says something like, oh, yeah, I was totally thinking about, the podcasters are going to wonder, why did I write down Saul's name? And that's why they were talking about this. But I just felt like, I felt like Teeny was speaking to us.
Yes, I did feel the same. And I do feel like she's a really great narrator. She's providing insight into a lot of components of the show and kind of breaking it down and making it a little more personal, which I think is lovely to have someone who's able to do so, because it really does help people see it from a different perspective, that yes, even though we're playing a game, we're still human and we're still dealing with emotions and the effects of the decisions that we're making, and the reasons why we don't want to do certain things might be influenced by other components of ourselves. So I really did appreciate hearing that, and I love that she's able to do that, and I think she's fantastic with the way that she provides that information.
Oh, I just wholeheartedly disagree.
Oh, really?
Teeny makes absolutely no sense to me. I'm sorry. You don't want to vote out a pre-merger. Hello, what does that even matter? Like,
Well,
I don't.
and I'm not saying I agree with her. I like that she's able to explain that
I see what you're
there is,
saying.
it's not just all game mechanics. And because I do feel like someone who hasn't necessarily played, they might be sitting there going, "Well, I don't understand. Why can't you just vote this way? Like, what's wrong?"
Right.
Well, because you're still human, right? And there's still those things. Now, I'm not saying she's correct in the decision she made. That I would probably tend to say, no, you're not supposed to be letting your emotions control you, right? But I do appreciate the fact that she's reminding viewers, like, hey, by the way, like, we are real people, and there are parts of this that become a little more difficult when you're having to make these decisions. So yeah, that's the part. So I don't necessarily agree with it, but I do appreciate the fact that we're hearing that.
Yeah.
I guess I can be open to that. I just don't. I'm just like that old crotchety Facebook group member that's like, why do they cast super fans? It messes with the game. I don't know. I'm just old and crotchety. I guess that's why they called me Mima out there.
Are you 45?
Yeah.
Because apparently
I
that's
mean,
old.
I could be 45. I could be 100. Actually, Jeff called me. He said I was walking around like I was 100 years old. And that's why they started calling me Mima. And I was like, Jeff, you just blew up my whole game. I've been lying this whole time about my age. I'm actually 100, and you just told everyone. And I was like hoping
Damn
that
it,
would be
Jeff.
yeah. Huh?
I said, damn it, Jeff.
Right. So anyway,
as opposed to Jeff, who could be 100 and will still look the same. So
forever amen.
All right. Well, do either of you have anything or anyone else you want to discuss before we get to the rules?
No, I'm ready to go.
I would like to say, just give a shout out to Kyle. Come on, bro. I'm pulling for you. You're just so cute. I want you to stay in the game.
He is
Well,
a
we'll
very
see.
kind soul. He is a
Yes.
very kind soul.
He wants to prove that nice people can win.
I would
And
like
even
to
if
see
you're
it.
45.
Even if you're 45.
But a nice person wouldn't lie about something like that. So,
It's fair. It's
yeah.
fair.
All right. Well, there were, of course, other things going on. Some of them I've already posted, like 4 of them in my YouTube shorts at David Bloomberg TV, and more will be coming. One that's already up there, of course, is the perfect scene with Teeny giving those looks to the camera after Rome went in on Saul. Yes, those were amazing.
Classic.
Now, before we get to how Kishan did, we do want to mention that the rules we're about to discuss come in a shorter and much more colorful version in poster form. And so go to robhaswebsite.com/yxlostfeed and then scroll down to the poster and click on it. We've got Liz doing her best Vanna White. And someone else who has not aged. In addition to the poster, you can also scroll down and get the poster on a t-shirt, because that's a lot easier to keep with you all the time.
That's right.
Or you can get the checklist on a t-shirt, which just goes through the rules in a different way. So again, you can get any of these at robhaswebsite.com/yxlostfeed.
Excellent.
All right. Well, the episode that we watched made it seem like Genevieve decided to turn on Kishan in large part because he used her name as a decoy. His interview shed a different light on that, but opened up a whole new view into the way he was playing, adding to what we already saw from him on the show. We saw Rome as the chaotic player, but was it actually Kishan? And what was he missing that will run through our entire discussion? At RHAP, we know Survivor, and we know why Kishan lost.
I love these little teasers.
Yes. The first and most important rule is to scheme and plot, and Kishan definitely was doing this. We already knew he was super tight with Teeny. And of course, the two of them were in the middle of the other two duos, with him saying they had really great relationships with both. What we didn't know until his interviews was that he also had what he believed was a very solid alliance with Genevieve as well, such that he didn't even consider himself and Teeny a duo. Rather, he considered them plus Genevieve a trio. And he further said that the plan to get rid of Rome as soon as he used his idol had been floated previously, and Genevieve appeared to be on board with it. Now, I want to emphasize what I just said, and that the words appeared to be are the key here. Because if there's one thread that I believe is going to run through a number of these rules, it's that Kishan had one idea of what was going on and what other people were thinking, and those people had their own ideas. In fact, I think he did a lot of things without considering what other people might think, or at least not recognizing that they might be thinking something other than what they were saying. So it's really appropriate to me that we have Liz here, because it seems, Liz, that a lot of your own strategy was not only considering what others would think, but molding it the way you wanted.
I really, really appreciate you saying that. Yeah, I have a degree in leadership, so I always say, like, it's just a master's in manipulation. I know how to get people around an idea and to push that narrative forward. And I think Kishan thought he knew how to do that, right? We see many scenes of him, oh, I'm just pushing him to go do this or that. But really, I think in trying to do it, maybe just in this one tribal council, trying to do so many things, like, which I'm getting ahead of myself with the rules, like just doing too much, right?
Yes. So you scare people, David. They don't want to talk about another
Halloween.
rule too soon.
I ain't scared. I just appreciate an outline is all.
Yeah. Hold on. Watch me scare Jessica. Ready?
Oh God.
No,
No, it's awful. This is the worst candy. Besides, like, circus peanuts, which I think you like those
Oh
too.
yes, those are amazing.
Oh, God, just
Ew.
eat chalk, right? Just eat chalk. What are you doing? It's
Right?
disgusting. Anyway, moving
Uh,
on. Candy
moving on.
corn,
Yes.
pumpkin.
Now,
Oh, God. I can't even like the texture.
see,
Ugh, it's
see, I've
just
scared
so.
her. Just told you.
Yeah, you just moaned and made me throw up. They're so gross.
Mommy and Daddy are
It's like a
fighting.
Snickers.
Help me in the comments.
There's so many better candy options.
people will take side in the comments on
They
candy
do.
corn. Trust
And
me.
listen, if
Yeah.
you're on his side with candy corn and circus peanuts, come on.
Then you're
Come
I
right.
on.
agree. I
Yeah.
agree with
No.
Jessica.
Thank you.
They're effing nasty.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope I'm allergic to them.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be amazing? You're like, yep. Circus peanuts. Damn, can't eat those.
Wah, wah.
Anyway,
Well,
are we talking
yes,
about Kishan?
Yes, getting back to
we're back to
Kishan.
Kishan.
What episode is this?
Yeah.
Who lost?
I think that he sees now what he didn't in the game, because
Yeah.
he told Dalton Ross, "You feel so naive in that moment." But again, you have to remember these are 18 people who all knew exactly what they were doing. Every single person knew that they had strategy, knew exactly what they were going to do. I thought I knew exactly what I was going to do. And like I said, that's the key here to me. He was enacting his own plan, but other people, especially in this case, Genevieve, had their own plan. And beyond just the plan, he also told Dalton, the thing that you don't realize is other people have relationships in the background as well. And you just never know who is going to be prevailing and who's going to be the strongest. And certainly he proved that to Asia in just the prior tribal council when she believed she had a tight relationship with him while he had a better one, he thought, with Genevieve. Now, Genevieve turned that around on him. And as he also told Dalton, it really humbles you in that moment where you're like, okay, I just got outplayed. And I think, Liz, going back to your season again, I think there was a theme in your season of several people, including one on your tribe for sure, but who were certain that they knew where everybody stood, but were wrong.
Absolutely. I think that's the main reason why most of us lose, right? I think Jeff even opened it in our season. All of you are just blindly confident, and almost everyone will lose, right? And I think that's something, especially in this first stage of the game, you have to be very cognizant. Like, I don't know what's going on, right? Like, maybe I don't know. And not to the point of paranoia, because that's another reason you can lose, right? Being too paranoid, but to the point where you are open enough to really see what's going on, right? It sounded like, and maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, I don't know, like Kishan was making plans 2-3 votes in the future, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, well, if Rome is gone, Genevieve has to attach herself to me. And so I'm like, bro, you ain't even gotten to the vote yet. Like, you're already thinking about tomorrow. Ooh, slow down, baby. You're going too fast.
Yeah. Well, and that's something we've talked about a lot too pre-game when we read the press that is provided, and so many players are talking about the plans that they've already created in their own minds before they even play the game. Like, this is who I want to align with, and this is what I foresee my alliance looking like and what I want to do in the game, and they come up with all these great ideas, but they are failing to recognize that everyone else is coming in with a plan too. And you have to be able to be mindful of that. And I think that we saw with Asia when she came and she had all of these great ideas, and then she finds herself on a tribe with Rome, and you're like, whoa, wait a second. Now things are definitely going to have to change. And I do think that Kishan just really got ahead of himself, where he thought for certain, yes, I am secretly controlling everything here and no one can tell, when in actuality other people were secretly controlling everything and he just couldn't tell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he almost did play his way out of it this time.
Sure.
Almost. Because one part of his strategy was to create rifts between other players on the tribe. And that certainly wasn't difficult to do when it came to Rome. As Kishan said on the show, my strength is getting to know people, really understanding them, and then being able to beautifully manipulate them. That should have been the moment we knew Kishan was going. Now, we saw him do some of that. For example, when he was encouraging Rome to be extra Rome when approaching Saul about his shot in the dark. As he told Mike Bloom, I knew that was going to turn terribly. Rome doesn't know how to ask people for things. He's just going to demand it. I'm going to hype him up. I want to create that divide between them. And he did. It took a monumental effort on Genevieve's part to push them to vote together, not to mention both of them overcoming it as well. And that was probably the best part of Kishan's plan to keep them separated. And it seems like it came close to working.
Yeah. I would say that Kishan was playing to Rome's weaknesses, right? The things that were easily manipulated. But what Genevieve does, and why Genevieve is still in the game, is she was playing to Rome's strengths.
Yeah.
Right. His strength is his loyalty. His strength is his, he wants to be the center of attention. Right. And that can, in his personal life, Rome the host, right? That is his strength. And so she played to those strengths, which feeds the ego, right? Nobody wants to, have their weaknesses pointed out, right? Nobody wants to be manipulated. And I think Kishan was really playing to those weaknesses of Rome's, which bit him in the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I do think that in Rome's mind, when he's comparing and contrasting the two, that with Genevieve was, she will be so loyal to me because he is looking at her as someone who is reinforcing all of the good that Rome sees in himself. She's making him feel better about himself. Whereas if he really starts looking at what Kishan is centering around, he could say, no, wait a second. He's trying to get me riled up. He's trying to get me upset. And you might not see that in the moment, but then once someone kind of points it out to you, then you have time to really pay attention and go, wait a second. So he's not looking out for me. He's looking out for himself. So I do think that that's a really great point, that they were certainly playing different parts of Rome. And unfortunately, Genevieve was playing the better part of Rome in order to make her game turn out the way that she wanted it to turn out.
Yes. So we can go into the second rule. We've dipped our toes in a little bit here. It says not to scheme and plot too much and to keep your scheming secret. And we definitely have some things to talk about here. Now, I want to start with something that Kishan told Gordon Holmes. He said, I don't have any regrets about going too big too soon. And then he added, it's part of the fun, and otherwise you're just sitting in the background waiting to be taken to the end. He said, the fun part of the game is making moves. Well, no wonder Jeff Kishan. He played exactly.
Didn't he even say big moves? I think he said big moves.
He played according to what Jeff loves rather than doing what's necessary to win. He also said, I wanted to play Survivor to have fun, have a good time. I wanted to make big moves. I didn't want to just be dragged along. Now, I'm glad Kishan had fun. But we're here to talk about gameplay for winning, including that $1 million at the end that anyone could use. But, and we know that big moves are not the way to do it, especially so very early in the game.
Big moves are a no-no. Big move. No, don't do it. You're gonna lose. I'm having so much fun. Who would have thought this voice can go that low? I have an incredible range. It's totally off tune, but it's incredible.
I was going to say, you
love
can sing next,
That's listen, David raps. Just saying.
No. David raps.
Oh, wait.
David raps.
As good as Sam?
That's what I was going to say. I think maybe there's a rapping angle here because we did see Sam rap.
Yeah, but Sam didn't lose, so there's no reason to.
Okay, so
when Sam loses, will
big
you
moves.
rap?
Yes, big moves.
Not when Sam loses.
Well, he's not my winner pick, so
he's
I
not
can
the winner pick.
Things.
He's not. TK was my winner pick.
Oh no!
I just pick whoever is the hottest. because I just want them to be around, and he is fine. I mean, TK, if you're watching, holler, I'm single and I can buy you a drink. Okay.
And a bourbon burger.
And a bourbon burger or
He's a
two.
rumored billionaire.
Yeah. So speaking of big moves like this, I totally get that part of, I came here to play. I came here, to do this
Sure.
or that. But, you don't want to burn out too fast. Survivor, it feels like a sprint, but it's a marathon, right?
Mhm.
And you
Yeah.
gotta
Mhm.
you gotta like slowly build up. I mean, and obviously I lost. I got it. But like the first few
Mhm.
episodes, I'm just sitting around like making jokes about money and men. And then the last episode, I'm, stealing Maria's win, right? Like it was very much just, okay, I'm gonna make big moves, but I don't have to make them right now. Right now, I have to be safe
Yes.
so that I
And
can
that
play that
is a great
individual
yes.
game.
Yes, and that was the thing that Kishan seems to not have recognized. He was safe. And he even said during the episode, no one's talking about us. Like
Yeah.
no one's mentioning our name. That's a really good thing. So there's no reason to start causing people to start looking at you if you don't need to just yet. You could have just been safe. This could have been an easy vote. This could have been one that everyone kind of got behind and moved on. But then you're like, no. Maybe now's the time. No, maybe now wasn't the time, Kishan, because look what ends up happening. It all went back to Kishan.
I mean, he was a bit contradictory in this overall. He came into the show saying in the pregame that he wanted to lie low for a while. And he did say something similar in early episodes. But then he also said things like, I'm not here to play safe. I'm here to create some chaos. So maybe he thought he could create chaos and stay under the radar.
Yeah.
As he talked a couple times, like you said, about how his name hadn't come up. But in a 5-person tribe, the chaos creator cannot stay hidden for long. When Mike Bloom asked him about future players who want to incorporate chaos into their own games, Kishan said his advice is to know their limits. He said, I thought my chaos was unending, and I thought it could just be an infinite amount, and I would just be able to recognize what's going on behind the scenes. But when there is so much happening, you're going to be left out of a conversation. That's just the case. If you're going to play it ultra safe, you're going to probably know a lot more of what's happening. However, you are not going to be making any big decisions and big moves, and everything's going to end up turning out in a slightly bland way. Versus if there's a lot of chaos, you might not know exactly what's going to happen, as in my case, but it's a lot more fun. And there he is again with the fun, even while acknowledging this was a big reason he was sent packing and that you know more by playing safer. Now,
This is why Survivor needs to cast more poor people.
I mean, I was thinking
because we need people that want to win. Like that's
Yeah.
I could not understand out there when people are like, I'm just here to have fun. Number one, I didn't believe it. Right. I was like, what? Like
I was there for the money.
I could go to Disney World. You know what?
And not get dirty.
Right? Like, what about this? I was very much like Keith. That was like this. So this is not fun. Like, like
Survivor
I have fun
ain't
in my
fun.
life.
Going on a cruise is fun. Going fishing's fun. Going to play golf is fun. This ain't fun. The late
it really is not fun.
And I appreciate the idea of people who really just want the money. The amount of people who have been like, I don't care about the money. I just want the title. Well, title, I wanted the title too, but that came with the money.
Amen.
Yeah. I mean,
amen.
I would think that some people believe it's a lot more fun to win $1 million and then to do something fun with that $1 million.
Yeah. All right, Kishan, we love you anyway. You're super cute. I wish you would have stayed. I really like cute guys.
Clearly, you picked TK as your winner.
Yeah. Now, it wasn't just chaos and big moves that caused Kishan problems in this rule. We saw on the show that he proposed using Genevieve's name as the decoy because he didn't want his out there. And the show made it seem like Rome was the one who told her this. But Kishan said in interviews that he told her. And he also said that he and Rome came up with the idea together, but he wanted to make sure it was okay. And she said it made sense and seemed agreeable. Clearly it wasn't. There's that word seemed again. For one thing, we saw Rome insisting to her that it was Kishan that came up with the idea. You brought it up earlier and said, oh, there was no malice to it when he said it. I think that was a follow-up conversation. I think Kishan talked to her, said we both came up with it. And then later she was talking to Rome and Rome was like, no, we didn't both come up with it. Kishan came up with it. And, and then said, oh, but there was no malice, of course. And she's like, sure. But aside from that, I think this is another case of not considering what another person might think. He knew he didn't want his name out there.
Right.
Why would he think Genevieve would be okay with her name being out there?
Yeah.
He even told Dalton Russ, I didn't think much of it. Who knew that that's what was turning in her head? Well, you should have.
Yeah, because you didn't want it either.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to be the decoy vote. It's a terrible place to be.
Now, there was more to it, of course. Kishan said on the show that the true benefit of switching the vote to Rome was it left Genevieve in a more vulnerable position. But again, he apparently didn't consider that she might realize that. Plus,
doesn't want to be in that position.
Yeah. He told Mike Bloom that he thinks she noticed him not sitting back and letting things happen, but rather guiding and controlling the votes and then telling her and Rome. Again, she was thinking about things in a way that he did not recognize. There's this common thread here.
Yes.
Yeah, it sounds like, kind of similar to Tevin and myself. Tevin thought we were working together, and we were up until a point, right? And he said, oh, I just feel like, Kishan might have seen Genevieve. Maybe Genevieve was acting like me. We didn't see her a lot in the first few episodes. Maybe she really was laying low. Maybe she was trying to find her footing. A lot of us go out there, I think everybody, and we try to find our footing, right? It's like, oh, I don't know. I thought I was going to come out this way. It's turning into this. Let me lay low so I can figure out what I want. And maybe Kishan, because this seems to be a theme, just took that as, oh, unlike me, who wants to make big moves, she's just the one playing it safe, which that's not the gameplay I like or admire. So she's going to be easy to manipulate because she just wants to be safe, right? So maybe, again, it's that underestimating of Genevieve and not, like David said, even considering that she's playing the game. I don't know. It seems like he didn't even consider that she was playing the game.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that you have to truly, he knew that she was close with Rome. And that was something that he talked about in some of his exit press as well. So, he should have been considering, well, she's clearly close with Rome. So there has to be something that she's doing in relationship to that because she's tying herself to Rome. So there are a lot of levels that I feel like he just kind of didn't even consider and just really was not cognizant of the effect that the conversations he's having with Rome and Genevieve could potentially come back together, and then they start comparing notes, essentially.
Yeah, he knew that she was close to Rome, but he believed that she was closer to him. And because they had those conversations, from very early about, oh, as soon as he gets rid of his idol, we got to get rid of him. He believed she was being honest with him.
Sure.
And again, it didn't occur to him that this is Survivor and people sometimes lie.
It's crazy. What?
Yeah.
Like about their age? Oh my gosh.
No, nobody would ever do that.
Or
about how much. Yeah, exactly. That was, yeah. Now, the third rule tells players to be flexible. Now, Liz, we just talked about Kishan having a few different alliances and trying to move things around, but how do you think he was overall with this rule?
I think he was about as flexible, as my hamstrings once I turned 45. Not very. He thought he was controlling things. And if he would have been flexible, to me, flexible is another, in Survivor terms, you have to be open, right? To me, he was so inflexible. This is the plan. I've set it up all day. I'm feeling myself. I can clearly see Rome and Saul, I've pushed them apart. This is working perfectly. But I think if he was flexible in his thinking, he said, oh, Genevieve and Rome, they're talking a lot today. Or, oh my gosh,
Mm.
why are Rome and Saul talking, a couple hours before sunset? And he probably would have gotten with the program and, convinced Genevieve otherwise. But I think it was so immovable in, I've got the plan. This is what's happening. I've, spent the last 10 days or whatever making this right. This is the time to make the move.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking along the same way. There were, in some ways it seemed like he was being flexible and that he had multiple possible choices. But on the other hand, there is a specific part of this rule that says players should have their finger on the pulse of the tribe. And you just described, Liz, all the ways he did not have his finger on the pulse of the tribe. We mentioned that he's told Dalton Ross, you don't realize other people have relationships in the background as well. But that's something you need to do your best to know. He believed he knew exactly what Genevieve would do. But she was not a chess piece on his board. She had her own strategy, and it didn't line up with his.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like once he kind of got the momentum, it was like he was feeling and he was excited, and I can't wait to go to tribal kind of thing. And it was really just, it was almost like it was no longer like in his control. Like once it was like, here we go, this is what's happening. And then that's the direction. And there was no like, well, hold up, wait, let's think about this. Where I think the approach that they took last episode, or was it when Asia went, so it was last episode when Asia went home, where they had a conversation with Saul and they had a conversation with Asia, and there was the, hey, what do you think about this? And they were kind of weighing their options and then making the decision based upon weighing those options, where this kind of almost like seemed like steamroll, like, oh, this is the time.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're here, instead of really weighing the options, like, are we really here? Is this the best time? Maybe we need to pump the brakes and we can always do this later. Because if Genevieve is already on board with this idea of voting out Rome, that means she'll be okay with it later, right? And she might get to that point later when it's more necessary. It didn't seem necessary right now.
Such a good point. That's really smart.
Well, thank you.
You should play.
Oh, what? It's crazy, right?
And then when you're done, podcast about it. Yeah.
Oh my God. What a crazy idea.
I'm a crazy lady.
All right. Well, we could go to the fourth rule, which tells players not to let their emotions control them. And here I need to give Kishan props. And he even practically cited to this rule when he said in tribal council, when you're so deprived of food, you can't sleep at night. There are parts of people's personalities that come out that bother you, that irk you. But that's letting emotions get to you. When you're playing this game, you have to be more strategic than that. And he was exactly right. He wasn't trying to vote out Rome because he was annoying. He was doing it because Rome was even more chaotic than he was. And as he said on the show, he could trust him now, but not in the future. But as he said that in tribal council, little did he know that he was explaining precisely what Rome and Saul would be doing to him a few minutes later, putting their emotions aside to join forces and vote him out.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah. I want to say, like, don't let your emotions run the show, which a lot of people say, oh, yeah, of course. Like that was the reason I didn't try to vote Q out after the Applebee's thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I think Kishan let his positive emotions run the show, right? You have to be pretty neutral and steady the whole game to make it pretty darn far and have a good case at the end. Because his positive feelings were, oh my gosh, I'm so excited, I'm doing the thing I was thinking about for a week at Ponderosa before we could talk. I'm doing the things that I said during casting I'm going to do. Like those are all great feelings, but I think letting those feelings run the show is the reason why we just talked about him being inflexible in the game.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. You should play.
Right?
Thank you. If you know anybody, tell them to call me. I'm allergic to coconut, though. Will they take me?
I think you can get them.
I don't know. You might not last that long.
Yeah, I might be wasting a spot. I might not even make it to the island.
Well, I think the interesting thing too is the comparison to like Rome with that particular point where you have Rome who people think is playing very chaotically and playing very emotionally and playing from a place that's not necessarily the correct avenue, right? But he did the exact opposite of what Kishan did because he was looking at this going, God, I can't stand Saul and I want Saul to go home really badly. I want that guy voted out now, to then going, well, now wait a second. Let me look at this from a different angle and let me put that and did attempt to apologize to Saul. So I think it was a nice juxtaposition to see between the two, where you had Kishan not doing that, but then you had the person Rome who everyone thinks is doing that actually playing the game in a different way. So it was interesting to see the two come together in like one episode.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, the fifth rule reminds players they need to pretend to be nice and play the social game. Jessica, did you see anything indicating any problems with Kishan here?
Well, that's what makes this so very interesting, right? Because Kishan came across as very likable and he was a social player, and he talked about how he had created very close relationships early on where there was the triplicate, if you will, as opposed to just a duo. So I do think that he was able to genuinely be nice, but I think that because he was genuinely being nice, did we lose Liz?
It looks like we lost Liz for a
No,
moment
I'm
there.
just
We lost
rubbing my eyes and I didn't
Oh,
want to be
okay.
on camera. But go on.
I do love the photo though, Liz. So
I'm
I
so
don't think
cute.
you are so cute. I don't think that he struggled with playing a social game. I think he was able to form those relationships, which is why he had some options. But I also think that he wasn't recognizing, as you've indicated, that other people were also going to be doing the same thing. And other people were going to be weighing those relationships and how those relationships were going to affect their game and who was going to be the best person for their game, as opposed to just what was going to be best for Keyshawn. So it was an interesting mix because yes, I think he's very likable and I think people got along with him and I think he did very well in that regard. But he wasn't recognizing other people's strengths in relationship to the types of social game they were all playing as well.
Yeah, I mean, all I have here is that, he seemed to be a pretty likable guy who could get along with just about anyone, even if he was trying to encourage a couple of his tribe mates to not get along with each other.
Sure.
Um, he talked in interviews about getting really close to Genevieve on a personal level, said, that was the only time he cried out there and stuff like that, which was one reason he was sure they were locked in together. But as he was relying on Rule 5 to connect them, she was making use of Rule 4 for herself.
Fair point.
All right. Well, Liz, I don't know if you had anything else, or we'll move to the sixth rule.
Nope. I think you did an all right job there.
Thank you. So this one warns against being too much of a threat. And we discussed earlier how Kishan said in the first few days of the game that he wanted to stay under the radar and be low key. But then we also discussed what he said in this episode about not being there to play safe, but being there to create some chaos. I don't think the chaos itself caused him to be recognized as a threat, but rather it was the moves he was making, the making of the chaos, not the chaos itself. Which, we discussed somewhat in the second rule. Indeed, one thing Genevieve told Saul was Kishan is way more dangerous as compared to Rome. And Kishan expanded on that and telling Gordon Holmes that while Rome would be a perfect shield for later, Kishan himself would not be, because he and Teeny would sit in the background and make decisions and be threats.
Yeah, and we've talked about this too as being a threat to someone's game because of the potential votes that you can cast in relationship to that person, against that person. So you end up becoming more of an individualized threat to someone's game. And so you end up looking at them differently. And I think Genevieve was certainly looking at Kishan differently because she was recognizing he's doing all of these things, and that's going to negatively affect my game. And my game is with Rome, and I know Rome is going to be loyal to me, and he's going to do everything that I want to do, whereas Kishan is not. And so he becomes more of a threat to her. So that's where it becomes very individualized.
I totally agree. And I think it goes back to something we've shared earlier about him just thinking too far ahead. And in Survivor, especially, there's only 5 people, right? And you just went to tribal, probably already like on edge, a little spooked. Things didn't go the way you thought. You still got Asia out, but it's like, wait, Teeny voted for who? And, like that was just a weird vote. It wasn't, it didn't go the way most people thought it would go as far as the votes went. So for him to, basically back to back, I'm just going to be more forward facing about how I want to vote and how I want it to go. Yeah, that definitely probably, threw up some red flags.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, the 7th rule covers idols and advantages in game mechanics. And while Kishan didn't have anything himself, he had to dance around what Rome had, though he eventually fell victim to it. He thought that once Rome's idol was gone, Genevieve would be totally on board with getting rid of him. And it seems like she didn't push back, just apparently went along until it came time for the rubber to meet the road. And she decided, yeah, I don't really want that. Or maybe she had decided a long time ago and she was just leading Kishan on. It's hard to say. Right. Either way, once she flipped the script on him, Rome's vote steal made him literally powerless. And all he could do was sit and watch till the end of tribal council.
Yeah. And this is, this is one of those things. It is terrible to just kind of watch all of the premise behind Survivor, right? Is that you get to vote people out and then you don't get to because someone takes your vote from you. And I don't think that we've actually seen steal a vote like work.
I think someone mentioned a couple seasons ago it working well, but again, I can't remember the exact situation, but this is certainly one of the few times.
Yeah. And I do think that Genevieve really explained this so well because there's so few people. The permutations are so limited and it makes the power almost that much greater, right? When you only have 5 people and one person has to steal a vote. Oh my gosh, you are really, 2 votes really can mean the world. And that's the part of this that I don't necessarily love with these smaller tribes, because you really do take so much power away from people just with something as simple as a steal a vote, as opposed to when you would have maybe 8 people left in a tribe and steal a vote might not have as much of an effect as it would when you're down to such a small group of people.
Yeah. I loved it, honestly. I thought it was great, though. It was made for like great gameplay because, yeah, like David said, they took his vote and he literally, it was like losing fire. It was like, I see Kenzie winning. Yes. I can't not, I can't just sit there, but I know I'm about to lose, like it was giving that same energy. But I want to say the thing about this rule that I was really thinking about, because to Jessica's point, yeah, there's not really much you can do. But I feel like if Kishan, this is like the through line here, if he would have understood or slowed down, because I don't think Kishan got on Survivor lacking awareness of other people, right? But I think he was letting those positive emotions run him. I think if he would have, I know Rome has a steal a vote. Let me think about how Rome wants to use this. Right. And that's what the rule is, know how to deal with idols and advantages. Rome, to me, just from what I see, is a braggy and flashy man. Very similar to me. I love being the center of attention. right? If I'm thinking about Rome, and I know he already played his idol, so he saw season 46 and he's just playing these things because, he doesn't want to end up like Venus and Q and Jem and Hunter and Tiff and, right? And so I know all these things. I'm going to run the scenario, not about through what I want to do, through what Rome wants to do with his advantage. Rome wants, he said, I made fire in 20 seconds. I'm good. You might as well name the survivor Rome. I bet you he's probably said that to somebody, I would have. And so knowing that, I would think, well, how does Rome want to play this advantage? It's a steal advantage, right? And David just told us, they are not really used very successfully. Rome wants to use this to light up the cameras, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
He wants to be infamous on Survivor. We can just tell. And so if I'm Kishan, I'm thinking he's not going to want to steal it from Saul because that's boring. That's obvious, and why would he steal it from Genevieve? And, is he going to steal it from, oh, wait, Teeny doesn't have a vote, like all this. And so that's probably when I would think, oh my gosh, is it me? Right.
Yeah.
So that I think he really, what's the opposite of nailed it with the rule?
His thumb? I don't know.
Right. He missed the mark.
Yes, missed the mark.
Is what I was trying to say.
Yeah.
Well, and I am curious because he did have that conversation with Rome about talking about with the steal a vote versus taking Saul's whatever it's called,
Shot in
that
the
thing.
Oh,
Shot in the dark. Thank you. Yeah, and so I do think that makes sense, that he should have really been paying attention to the idea that Liz was just talking about, with it wanting to be flashy, wanting to be a move. And so if he's talking about, I'll tell him to give me a shot in the dark. So maybe he should have been like, well, do we really need to do the steal a vote right now? And just kind of talk through the permutations of it. What is this going to look like? Do we really need to do this if we're all on board for it to be Saul? Maybe that would have been the better play than being like, yeah, like go for it. Really force him into have to give you his shot in the dark, or back him in a corner and make him feel like he has no options, and give him an ultimatum, right? That's what he ended up doing. But
not
I
a
think that would be
threat.
interesting.
Yeah.
It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a threat. It was an ultimatum.
Of course not.
Definitely not a threat.
I do think, Jessica, you mentioned, with the steal a vote, how much power it has in these smaller tribes. And maybe that's why we're seeing it work now when it didn't work in the bigger tribe. Because in a bigger tribe, you have lots of permutations and you think you know where it's going. Like Stephen Fishback, and whereas in a tribe where there's only 4 votes being cast,
yes,
it's hard to mess up. It's a lot harder to mess up.
Right. And I want to mention something here because we didn't really talk about this a whole lot, but with the journey and the idea that y'all need to agree, or you're all going to lose your vote, or one of you has to agree to lose your vote, and then you get these amulets and y'all have to get along and love each other, and all this craziness that came with it. Again, like that journey and forcing people to have to lose a vote in such a way, this is what it leads to, right? Because then Teeny doesn't have a vote, and so Teeny's looking at it as, well, I know where I fall in my group of people, and I know that if I lose my vote, we'll still be fine because I've got at least 3, I probably have 4, so we'll be okay. So okay, I'll take the heat on this one, because what did she say? I'm going to lose my vote either way. Right? She's like, if I don't agree, then I'm losing my vote. If I do agree, I'm going to lose my vote and at least get something for it. And so what ends up happening? Kishan goes home because now she doesn't have a vote. And so she's utterly powerless in all of what's happening. Nobody comes to her with this plan because they know Teeny doesn't have a vote. It doesn't matter. And so this idea of forcing players to have to lose the one thing that is the like most significant part of playing Survivor is so frustrating to me because it is not their choice, right? This was one of those journeys that someone else, one of the other tribes, got to choose who was
Yes.
going, and like, so it wasn't people's
Oh,
choice to
yeah.
go. It was you were being sent to go, and then all of a sudden here you're now your choice is you either lose your vote and agree who's going to, or you're all just going to lose your vote anyway, so who
Yeah.
cares? I really find that very, very frustrating.
That's disgusting, that is. That's disgusting. No, I hate it too. I was so glad that our season didn't have that. I was like, "Oh, good. They got rid of it because it's unfair."
Yeah.
It doesn't even make any sense, and it's not fun to watch. Nobody, you don't want to kick a puppy. Like, why are you doing this? Nobody wants to watch that. That's disgusting.
Yeah, I mean, I will say I agree with you, but I will say in this case, I don't think it mattered to the outcome. It's hard to say for sure, but even if Teeny had a vote, okay, that's one vote. They just wouldn't have bothered talking to Teeny.
Well,
I mean, they didn't tell Teeny the plan anyway, because
right.
everybody else knew that Teeny would tell Kishan. So I think they would have handled it. Everybody else would have handled it the exact same way, and then Teeny would have been like, "What the hell's going on?" Because apparently, and this is something we haven't brought up, but Kishan brought up, and I only saw him bring it up in one interview. What we did not see was before they sat back down again, or that before the tribal council ended, there was a lot of standing up and running around and talking to different people. We didn't see any of that.
Wow.
Yeah. And that made Kishan wonder what the heck was going on. And then, especially when right after that, once it's solidified, that's when Rome gets up, takes his vote. So I still think,
Well, right. But if
I
Teeny had a vote, if she had a vote, right? So then Teeny's back on the board, and so we're looking at 5 votes. She's got Kishan, and she thinks that Kishan is with her, and Kishan thinks Teeny is, with
Yeah.
him. And then you have Saul, who wants nothing more than to get Rome out of the game. And so if Teeny is on board to get Rome out of the game, and Kishan is on board to get Rome out of the game, and you've got 3, and Rome is threatening to steal a vote, so he steals Saul's vote, you still have 2, and you've got potentially 3.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is it flipped anyway. The point is it flipped to Kishan. So by stealing Kishan's vote, Rome ensures that it doesn't matter what Saul does. It doesn't matter what Teeny does.
Right, and I understand that, but I feel like it might have changed just some of the conversations that were being had, right? Just because she doesn't have a vote, so suddenly people are like, "Well, it doesn't matter. We don't need to talk to her because she doesn't have a vote anyway." Right?
I don't think they would have talked to her anyway because of how close Teeny is to Kishan.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think Jessica and David are both right. But
I have a sign saying it.
I think what I know you do, babe. I see it. I can read. That's a requirement, I think. You got to read the advantages. Anyway,
Be a
I think
billionaire.
the missing issue here is if Teeny had a vote, they probably would have had more skin in the game and probably tried to be in more conversations, push a certain agenda, etc. Whether or not, to David's point, that would have made any difference, we'll never know.
Yep. Yeah.
I
It's one
know,
of those
we
things
won't.
we'll never know. So
great episode either way, honestly.
Yes.
Best
Yeah.
of the new era.
Yeah.
I really think so.
Phenomenal. And I love the gameplay. I love that they were able to come up with the whole structure in which the outcome developed. Fantastic. But there are still things that I will always complain about.
Right.
As you should.
Right? Damn it.
Well,
I should.
Well, speaking more of those other players and what they all did, we could go to Appendix A, which is about the players keeping their end goals in mind when voting. And we often talk about voting out the weak, then the strong, then the weak, then the strong. But this vote wasn't about something like challenge performance. It was about alliances, which should always take precedence anyway. And in this case, it was all about, as Genevieve said, Genevieve. I used to work with a person named Genevieve who spelled her name the exact same way. So
Genevieve.
first time I've tripped up on that. And that Genevieve.
He's doing great, folks. Leave a review, leave a comment, like, subscribe, ring the bell.
Unlike Genevieve, the Genevieve I worked with was not a nice person. But anyway, no. As Genevieve said in Tribal Council, this was about what would benefit her game moving forward. And she laid out part of that in the episode, as she noted she didn't want to just go along with plans that aren't in her best interest. And while others wanted Rome out, she called him an asset. Some of the other peoples would have dropped the ET. And he was ruffling people's feathers, but not hers. I said some of the other people. I didn't say me. Some of the other people who were.
Go keep
going. I wouldn't, Rome. I wouldn't.
We know.
Rome, we love you over here.
And that Rome would always have her back, which this goes back to what we were saying earlier. I think it's an interesting point because we have seen a lot of Rome's wild gameplay, but like we were talking about earlier, he is actually a loyal player from what we can tell. Yes. He had his solid four, what he saw as his solid four with Genevieve, Teeny, and Kishan, and had no use for Asia or Saul. And that's why he was so surprised when Genevieve told him Kishan planned to go against him. So from Genevieve's viewpoint, why would she get rid of Rome and stick with Kishan when Rome has turned on nobody, and Kishan would have at this point turned on two supposed allies in 2 votes?
Yeah.
And then add that to the part where he floated her name as the decoy. And we also heard Kishan lay out his idea that getting rid of Rome would put Genevieve into a worse position, which, as I said earlier, I'm sure she also realized.
Right. Yeah.
Listen, though, but the appendix states, make your votes count, keep in mind your end goal. And Kishan's end goal was to have fun. And so I think he wins this rule. Okay? Let's get back to what the appendix states.
You're right. That the problem is
I'm never wrong.
You don't have a sign. You need a sign. Or maybe you don't need a sign.
I should just get one. Liz, you're never wrong.
There you
go. This was actually on Jessica's shirt, though. So
I do have a shirt with that on it. Yeah. Yes,
all right. Well, Jessica, send me your address and I'll send you a shirt. I can play this game too. This is so fun.
I would gladly wear that shirt. I absolutely would. Liz is never wrong.
You're getting a lot of shirts.
And she's a billionaire. I need them because you have so many shirt options. Yes. I don't have nearly enough. So
the shirt I'm wearing today describes Kishan's game. It seemed like a good idea at the time.
No.
It's a mushroom cloud.
Oh my gosh, David.
He's
gotta go to the hospital ward. That's a sick burn. I'm getting like residual burns. Gosh, bless America.
He does pick some hardcore t-shirts, I will say.
I mean, I picked a hardcore shirt here. I got me.
You did.
I do love now. I do love
you're wearing
that.
yourself.
Check it out. This is like when I'm like, I think this is when I'm like, soda's got to go. And this is like, I'm allergic to everything. I don't know. Anyway.
Well,
I wish it had the I'm pissed on it.
Yeah.
Someone made this and sent it to me. I wish it had the I'm pissed on it, but it was someone who loves me.
That would be great.
Hang on. Now I got it. Hang on. Let's make this show about me.
I love this.
Oh, here's where I'm screaming about Q. He's nuts. And here's where I am just flabbergasted about Q.
Oh, yes, I remember
yeah.
that.
Yes,
I
yes,
remember that one. Yes.
That
So
was
good.
funny.
I can't believe you screaming about Applebee's wasn't on there.
I think my friend was just sensitive. Like I think it's hilarious. Like I've healed.
Mhm.
I was just starving is all.
Right, you were
But a lot
hungry.
of like my loved ones say they had to leave the room. Like they've never seen me
Really?
like that. I really am like I mean, I know it sounds ridiculous, but like I really am like a pretty even keel person. Well, David's met me.
Mhm.
Like I really
Mhm.
am just a nice lady. And
She is.
so a lot
She
of
is.
my family and friends were like, that made me so uncomfortable. I cannot watch it. Like I
Wow.
couldn't. I had to like turn the channel, and I didn't warn
Wow.
anybody. So
I just had an epiphany. You should have been like a Snickers commercial. You know when
period.
people are like
Yes.
hangry?
Yeah, you're not
Yeah.
you when you're hungry.
Yeah,
Right.
we had a lot of Snickers jokes out on the
Yeah.
island after that. They're like, grab a bourbon burger. Like I just really like beef. But the thing y'all gotta know before we move on for me is I eat beef like 7 to 12 times a week. Like I've had
Wow.
steak twice today. Like it really is my
Wow.
main source of food. It's pretty much the only food that doesn't make me sick or like give me a
Mm.
rash. So like I really am a carnivore. So gosh, my mouth is watering. So when that burger came out, does that happen to you, Jessica? Like when you talk about food on the island, you have like a visceral response.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Okay, good, good. Because
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, you're
really
not
intense
alone.
for me. Anytime I talk about food and the island, like my mouth starts salivating hard. Anyway, Kishan, sorry you lost, bro. I was rooting for you. Again, you're super cute. I hope you're on my screen again someday. Love Big Movitis. It's a great television.
Great television, not great gameplay. But yeah,
Yeah.
let's finish up the Appendix A. And in the first 3 episodes, we didn't see Genevieve and didn't know what her status was other than being described as a tight duo with Rome. In fact, what we learned in the 4th episode and from Kishan's interviews is that Genevieve had relationships with pretty much everyone and basically had to choose which of them would be most advantageous for her going forward.
Right.
Each of those people felt they were very close to her. And for a while, they were probably right. I mean, there was no reason for her to make a decision about who to favor until the decision needed to be made. And
Yeah.
again, we come back to Kishan believing he knew what was going on, but forgetting that other players have their own thoughts and plans. While he talked in interviews about how super close he was with Genevieve and how they made decisions together and planned to take out Rome, that didn't mean Genevieve actually was on board or would stay on board with all of that.
She was following the Ghostbuster rule. You just
Yes.
say yes.
Yes.
Mhm.
When
Yeah.
someone asks if you want to be in an alliance, you
You
say
just say
yes.
yes. Yep.
Yeah,
Amen.
and then once she did make her decision to flip on Kishan, she still had to convince Rome and Saul, mostly Saul, that it was similarly in their best interest as well. After all, Saul had been told his dreams of getting rid of Rome would come true, and he didn't want to be lied to again. But Genevieve convinced them to put their emotions aside and focus on what would be better for their long-term game, just like she had.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. One thing I want to go there for a second because I think one thing that again, Keyshawn really underestimated Saul as a player because in the last, speaking of making your votes count, in the last vote, they left Saul out, Teeny and Keyshawn. And he was like, and Teeny voted for Saul. That never feels good. I mean, I want to know what it feels like, but I'm sure it never feels good, right? So to think that just because Saul is on the bottom, he's gonna go with what you're saying.
Yeah.
Is a little, it's giving naive, especially again, knowing Rome, he likes to be flashy. He wants to be unexpected. Like, I'm sure that when Genevieve finally got him on board with it, Rome was so excited to make like, oh my gosh, after I did all that, this is going to be so good,
Yeah. Mhm.
So I think again, it was him just thinking too much about the votes, but also like too little about the votes, honestly.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, I will say one thing. It wasn't necessarily that Saul was on the bottom. He was also like giving him like, here is the person you hate the most on a platter. Do you want to vote him out? So
Mm.
I will say that in Kishan's defense for how, with Saul himself. So
Sure. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can be open to that.
yeah. All right.
But
Well,
it just feels like it was too soon. It was unnecessary.
yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, and the last thing I also thought like Keyshawn gave away the plan too soon to Rome. It's always
Mm.
it's always the last plan that makes it. That's not always true. But with
Mm.
someone like if you're hinging on Rome, again, he wants to make a flashy move. He wants to do the unexpected. I feel like telling him in the middle of the day the plan, he's got all day to change his mind.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's something that a lot of players don't think about until they've been through it a couple of times themselves, or they've, listened to former players on podcasts.
Mhm.
All right, so I think it's about time to wrap things up. Liz, what are your final thoughts on Keisha? I know you just gave us some, but what are all of the rest of your final thoughts?
Yeah, so I know that I was really harsh on Keyshawn, but I think he was really fun. I think he's a player that could come back because, yeah, Jeff and the gang, and even we like to watch those big moves. Are they good for winning? Sometimes, most times not. But I thought he played hard and fast, and it was really fun. He had some great confessionals. And he's just super cute to look at. So, shout out Keyshawn.
All right,
Yeah.
Jessica.
I do think that Keyshawn was someone who I did not anticipate seeing such a quick downfall for Keyshawn
Mm.
because he did seem to have such great connections with so many people on his tribe, and he did seem to have so many options. And I think a player like Keyshawn could have utilized that to his benefit because he didn't need to be front and center. He didn't need to be stirring the pot. He could have just sat back, enjoying the relationships that he had created and letting the other people kind of create their own demise, right? If you want to fan the flames a little bit, you certainly can, but not to the extent that he was doing so and so soon. It's not necessary just yet in the game because now this is where you find yourself, Keyshawn. Unfortunately, you were voted out. And I think that he really got excited about the big move idea and that I'm going to be able to make things happen and I want to make things happen and I want to stir the pot and I want to cause chaos if I can. And unfortunately, when you are on such a small tribe, you can't hide what you're doing.
Mm.
It's very difficult to hide behind four other people and not have anyone go, well, wait, do you recognize what Keyshawn is doing? Do you see what's happening? And so, unfortunately for Keyshawn, I think he had the abilities to be a really great survivor player, but he needed to put himself on a different pace. And he could have gotten there if he just kind of slowed down, let the game happen around him. There was enough happening around him. He didn't need to help it, right? Like just let it be because it's already going there. Rome is got these trinkets. He wants to play. He wants to make moves. Let him. Let him. Let him do what he's got to do and don't push him in a direction that's necessarily going to put you in harm's way because that player becomes very threatening to you too, right? When you are dealing with someone who has the ability to make a big move and has a trinket or a toy or some type of advantage that he can use, you don't want to be on the receiving end of that. Unfortunately for Keyshawn, he found himself right there because he put himself right there. So sorry, Keyshawn. I do agree. You were super fun to watch. I love the just joy that you have in your face when you're on the television until the moment it was crushed. And then we saw it. We watched it leave your face in its entirety. So sorry, Keyshawn, but thanks for letting us chat about you today.
The introduction to my rules says something that we have to bring up from time to time. And, you know, most of us, I think, take it for granted. But I note the other presumption here, and I know it sounds silly, but it needs to be said, is that the player actually wants to win the game. They shouldn't be there for the experience or to face the toughest opponent or whatnot. Or rather, they can be if they want, I suppose, but those are not the people who we're focused on here. Survivor is a game, and the goal is to win, period.
Mm-hmm.
That is the basic assumption here, and these rules can lead good players to that end goal. To quote Harry, a superfan on Australian Survivor, people should play to win. Now, I have to kind of quote myself here because Kishan made it clear in his interviews that his goal was more to have fun than to win. And if he wants to do that and he enjoyed himself and we enjoyed watching him, that's great for him. But that's not part of our evaluation. Kishan said he was coming into the game with the plan to lie low and hide his strategy. And in his mind, I think he was still doing that even as he injected chaos into the game wherever he could. That's why he marveled to Teeny that his name hadn't come up. But taking a lead role in pushing a strategy and naming someone as a decoy and urging people to argue are not part of an under-the-radar game. And he was destined to be caught, especially when he was spending so much time thinking about his own plans, but not seeming to consider what was going through the minds of the other people around him. It was as if he thought he was the only one lying and scheming and strategizing. So if Genevieve told him that they were close, that meant it was true. If Genevieve said, sure, it's fine to throw my name out as the decoy, it must be okay. If Genevieve agreed about his plan to get out Rome, great, she was on board. I mentioned earlier how Kishan said, my strength is getting to know people, really understand them, and then get it, and then being able to beautifully manipulate them. But Genevieve was clearly stronger in that area. She had her own game going on. She might have felt emotionally closer to Kishan. We won't know that till her own interviews. But even if she did, she came to play. And as she said, she wasn't going to let someone else dictate moves that would make her game worse. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, Genevieve had relationships with everyone and basically could choose which of them would be most advantageous for her going forward. Genevieve outplayed Kishan at pretty much every turn. She joined him and Teeny in what seemed to be such a tight trio that Kishan would not turn against her. He wanted Rome out because he believed it was better for his game, but she wanted to keep him because she feels it's better for hers. He helped cause a bigger rift between Rome and Saul. She brought them back together with a common cause. That cause was to eliminate the person who thought he was running things and was causing chaos. While that outwardly might seem to be Rome, it was really Kishan. As he said himself, it's hard to play with a chaotic player. Kishan wanted to be the secret mastermind, but Genevieve felt that part already belonged to her. And then she showed she was right. And that is why Kishan lost.
That's right. Genevieve.
See, she didn't have time to learn how to make fire, but she knows how to make certain fires.
You know,
stuff
I
out,
need
so.
to I need to take a little walk back from that, don't I?
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
maybe playing the video games for 40 hours instead of learning how to make fire was a better idea for her. I
Yeah.
don't know. I mean, she clearly rocked it this episode.
Oh, is
so.
she the video game lady?
Yes.
Yeah.
I didn't
Yeah, she
watch
was
any
like
preseason stuff, but I did see that somebody was like, "Oh, I discovered this game," and
Yes.
I was
40
like,
hours. Yeah. She just kept
honestly,
playing.
that's probably for the best. You don't want to go in overthinking, honestly.
Well, no, it
You
was
really
instead
don't.
of practicing to make fire.
Oh, shoot, she's in trouble, girl.
Take it from Liz.
Escúchame, listen to me, okay? Make the fire. Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sweating.
Yes.
I'm sweating, y'all.
We said the word
Woo!
fire, and that's all
You
it
know
took.
it's
I know,
bad
this-
when you see Liz's forehead. Oh my
It's
god.
a personal issue that we are
Yes,
Ooh,
discussing
yes.
Chica.
now.
All right, let's end this thing. I need a
Well,
nightcap after that.
All right. Well, before we get to our predictions for next episode, which we will get to in a moment here, so stay tuned. I want to remind everyone that the rules we just discussed are, in fact, available in poster form and T-shirt form and checklist form. So again, go to robhasawebsite.com/yxlostfeed, and you can get everything.
That's right. Everything.
Get it all.
All right. What are we doing now?
Prediction.
You're telling people. Well, no. So, Liz, where can people reach you? Want to let people know before we get to predictions.
Oh yeah, sure. So I'm a content creator. I teach content creators like Jessica and David how to grow their businesses. If you really are interested in that, you can go to lizwilcox.com, hit the hot pink button in the top right-hand corner. You can't miss it. I would love to show you how I was actually able to take off 90 days to play Survivor and recover from the loss of losing Survivor. That's lizwilcox.com.
I love it. I am at Jessica Lewis 89 on Twitter, and I'm also at Jessica Lewis 6789 on Instagram. But I've mentioned this previously. I will say it again. David Bloomberg has so much content. I just often take his for Instagram. However, I do post during the actual episodes of Survivor. There is some live tweeting that's going on, and then obviously I post throughout the week. But I do not hold a candle to Mr. David Bloomberg over here, who has so many social media sites that he has an entire link tree. So you can see all of the content that he creates in all of the areas that he creates it. So David, where's your link tree and all of the deliciousness that is included there?
Yes, you could find my link tree at linktree/David Bloomberg with a dot before the EE in the URL. In addition to that, I am all over the place. You can, first of all, be sure that you're watching the Big Brother version of Why Blank Lost with Ovi Kabir as my co-host. The finale is Sunday. We will have our Why Blank Won and the Others Lost podcast covering the final four, probably on Tuesday. Again, week leading up to the wedding. And I'm also co-hosting the Tradar podcast for the Traders Canada season 2. That one I'm just taking off for the week. But, the rest of the season, I'll be there. Besides going to all these accounts on my link tree, you could find me directly on Twitter and Blue Sky as at David Bloomberg. On Threads is at David Bloomberg TV. And then at David Bloomberg TV is also where you can find me on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram. I have been posting 3 or more videos per day, often 4. And that's been going on all summer long. Of course, that includes clips from Survivor and Big Brother, plus other shows like The Traders Canada, The Summit, House of Villains, The Anonymous, you name it. I've got probably something on it. And if you want to, if you're not subscribed to me on YouTube yet, I'm approaching 40,000 subscribers on YouTube. So I
look at you.
Need a few more than a few more, but if you want to go and go to at David Bloomberg TV on YouTube there, it would be appreciated.
That's awesome.
That's amazing.
And listen, this man went from I don't want to do video podcasts to putting himself everywhere. Everywhere.
I love it. I call that the Drake method. Like Drake was on every song in like 2010. That's the Drake method, baby. I love it. Cheers to you.
Sorry, I'm 45. I don't know Drake that well.
Well, just Google it, babe.
Yeah.
AI will tell you.
Okay. Well, it'll probably tell me wrong. All right, time for predictions. In the preview, we saw Jeff say there's a brand new Survivor twist. And all I could say is, Jeff, it better freaking not be a double tribal council, because I'm barely going to have time to pull together notes for one person, let alone
but this
2.
Is not a new Survivor twist.
It would be at this point.
A double tribal?
Better not be. Better not. Okay.
No,
well,
they've
I hope
done
you're
double
right.
tribals when there's still 3.
Okay. I hope you're right. I really do. I'm going to be very angry. But
angry
whatever
David.
the twist
I like
is,
an angry David.
Yes. Whatever the twist is, at least a few people did not seem happy about it. It looked like Sam wasn't happy about something we were led to believe has to do with Andy and Sierra. Although, of course, we've seen plenty of out of context clips in these previews already, so we really can't judge that. And now, I do want to mention that Ari Bacher, who I frequently talk to on Twitter, suggested that he thinks this is what the new twist is, that there's a challenge for reward, and the teams are not the tribes, but a random split mixing everybody up. And this could also... Did you say boo or ooh?
I said, ooh, I love that. I hope that person's right.
That is interesting.
It could explain, for example, how Tiana supposedly throws Gabe under the bus. It could explain how Sam hears concerning information. So I have nothing better. So it sounds good to me. So I'm going to sign on to Ari's prediction here.
I think that's a great prediction because they've never done something like that.
Right. Now, all that doesn't really help determine who might go next. It seems hard to predict that Gata will lose an immunity challenge. But there has just been so much buildup regarding Sam and Sierra and Andy. It feels like this storyline has to go somewhere. I've been worried, especially this past episode, that Sierra making more of an effort to pretend to stick with Rachel and Annika as a so-called fake alliance could end up to her making that her real alliance. Especially since there's some, bickering going on with her and Sam.
Breadwinners. $1 million girls right there.
Yeah, but I really do think she and Sam are still solid. I think it's a red herring. So I'm going to say they stick together. And along with Andy, they blindside Annika.
I don't agree.
How dare you?
I was looking at my little cheat sheet here.
Yes.
And I immediately was like, Andy. I don't know why. Just going to go with Andy.
I don't agree.
Well, he's the one who jumped out at me. I was like, it's going to be Andy. And listen, maybe I should just ask my bag of rocks, but I'll go with Andy.
I have no idea. I don't shoot. Y'all walk into every episode like, well, let's see what happens. I don't know.
Pick the hot one. Pick the hot one.
I don't want any hot people to leave.
then yeah.
Well, we'll hold up the cheat sheet again, sis. Hold it up. Y'all come prepared next time. I don't know. I feel like we might be getting someone who's barely been in the show. So maybe Kyle goes home. I don't want
no
cutie. But I don't know. It's giving like but then again, it's like if the prediction is right, like they split into two like teams, that could be where a lot of drama comes from and somebody gets blindsided. But I feel like we've had some really good vote outs, like no easy votes, so to speak. So maybe I feel like next week we get just like a casualty, just like whatever, you can go. That's my prediction. It's going to be like whatever, they can get out of here. I don't care anymore.
So would that be like a Caroline?
Well, she's not going to mention names after she just said that,
Yeah, like Caroline or Kyle. It's giving Blue Tribe. Anyone on the Blue Tribe. Like, I'm so rude. You think I'd be more rude? Sensitive. But I'm not. Not when the cameras are rolling anyway. Yeah, I don't know. Honestly, I feel like maybe it's just like it'll be an exciting episode with a kind of fall flat. Like, all right, who are they? Kind of person.
Okay.
Interesting. Okay.
All right.
It's close to the Survivor Limbo Mergatory, so sometimes that happens.
True.
Yeah.
Where it's like if you're not in an alliance yet, I know the time is coming quickly. Where going to tribal, well, I know I'm not going to work with you, so you might as well just go right now.
Yeah.
Maybe that.
Okay.
Shout out Jim. I'm so rude. Why am I like this?
All
right, are we done here?
She's probably not listening at this point.
Right, I'm gonna get so much flack.
Well, as we wrap up, I want to encourage people to check out the RHAP patron program at robhasawebsite.com/patron. Rob does all sorts of special podcasts that are put out just for patrons. Plus, there's the Facebook groups and Discord. So you can support shows like ours and everything on the network by becoming a patron at robhasawebsite.com/patron. And make sure you're subscribed to all of the RHAP Survivor podcasts by going to the newly updated website, WeKnowSurvivor.com. And you can see everything there. Select your podcast service of choice and have it all come to you. In addition to us, there's all the great Survivor content like the Know-It-Alls, the B&B, Survivor International, you name it. It's coming to you. So just subscribe.
You should. And we want to thank everyone who works so diligently and hard at the RHAP website, not just on our podcast, but all of the podcasts and all of the content that David has just mentioned and then some. Scott St. Pierre, Jessica Sterling, thank you so much for all of the editing and the producing work that you do on all of the incredible shows that are put forth. Thank you to the entire staff and team for the work that you do. We really appreciate it. And we know that the listeners do as well. And Liz, Applebee's mascot, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been super fun. We really appreciate it. And I am so happy that you joined us. It was lovely to get to spend the evening with you, Liz. Thank you for your insight.
Thanks so much for letting me ramble on. This was awesome.
Yes, thank you. Let me add to that. You mentioned, I mentioned earlier, we got to hang out in Chicago. And I just want to add that, I said this on Twitter, but, Liz, everybody who came up to Liz, she took the time, she talked to them. She was truly amazing with everyone. And I think most of the Survivor players are. But I've seen some, who sometimes they're more interested in other things, talking to some of their own old friends. These are old school type people, ones. But so I just wanted to mention that. So yes, thank you, Liz, for coming on here, for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. I love interacting with the fans. It's been something I didn't, I went on to win, right? Something I didn't think about was being a small part of people's joy and watching the show and being a part of the legacy. And that has meant so much to me. So yeah, hit me up on social media if you've got something to say. I guarantee you I'll say something back. So see y'all soon.
All right. I do want to mention, I forgot to mention this earlier. We know the live show is going to be in New York next week. Obviously, I won't be there, and neither will Jessica, unfortunately. So just the timing on it didn't work. But we hope anyone who goes has fun. And, like I said, we will be back in a little bit more than a week. So thank you both. Thank you, Jessica, as always. Thank you again, Liz. And we'll see everyone soon. Bye.
Bye.